My wife enrolled me in a marriage program without consent. I attended, exposed control, took financial power back, and rebuilt our marriage partnership. I hadn't signed up for anything. I definitely hadn't agreed to spend $300 on what looked like relationship therapy disguised as a weekend retreat. But there it was, sitting in my inbox with my full name, contact information, and a detailed schedule of activities, communication breakthrough sessions, emotional intelligence workshops, the works. The payment had already been processed using our joint credit card. My wife had enrolled me without asking, without discussing, without even mentioning it existed. She walked into the kitchen while I was staring at my phone, already dressed for work, wearing that familiar look of practiced innocence, the same expression she used when she reorganized my home office to help me be more productive, or when she threw away my favorite shirts because they didn't represent the man I could become. "Oh good, you saw the email," she said, pouring herself coffee from the pot I'd made. "I thought you might miss it with all the clutter in your inbox." I set my phone down carefully. "You enrolled me in a marriage program. We need this. Both of us." She stirred cream into her cup with deliberate precision. "I've been researching for months. This program has incredible reviews. Couples say it completely transformed their relationships. You researched for months and didn't think to mention it once?" She sighed, the same exaggerated sound she made when explaining something she considered obvious. "Because I knew you'd resist. You always resist when I try to help us grow." There it was, the subtle shift that made everything my fault. My resistance to her unilateral decisions was the problem, not the fact that she made them without consulting me. I'd seen this pattern so many times I could script it. "The program starts this Saturday," she continued. "I already requested the time off for both of us. They accommodate working couples, so we won't lose vacation days." "You requested time off from my job?" "I called your manager. She was very understanding, said she admired wives who take initiative in supporting their husband's personal development." The audacity was breathtaking. She'd contacted my workplace, spoken to my boss, made commitments on my behalf, and somehow positioned herself as the supportive partner in the scenario. I felt that familiar surge of anger I'd been swallowing for years. But this time, something different happened. Instead of the usual frustration that led to pointless arguments, I felt oddly calm, almost amused. "That was thoughtful of you," I said, reaching for my own coffee. She blinked, clearly expecting pushback. "I'm glad you see it that way. I really think this will help us communicate better." "I'm sure it will." I scrolled through the email, reading the session descriptions, trust-building exercises, conflict resolution techniques, intimacy workshops. Sounds comprehensive. Exactly. We'll learn tools that successful couples use to maintain strong relationships. She was warming to the topic now, encouraged by my apparent cooperation. The program leaders are certified relationship counselors with over 20 years of experience. "And what happens if I don't want to participate?" The question hung in the air for a moment. Her expression shifted, becoming cooler, more calculated. "Well, that would be unfortunate. It would show that you're not invested in our marriage, that you don't care enough to try." There it was again. Participate in her program or be labeled as someone who doesn't care about the relationship. No middle ground, no alternative suggestions, no actual choice. "I see," I said, standing up and rinsing my coffee cup. "So this is really about my commitment to our marriage. Everything I do is about our marriage, about making us stronger." I turned to face her, and for the first time in months I smiled. Not the tired, resigned smile I'd been wearing lately, but something sharper. "You know what? You're absolutely right. We should both learn new tools for maintaining a strong relationship." She looked surprised but pleased. "I'm so glad you're open to this." "More than open. I'm inspired." I grabbed my keys from the counter. "In fact, I think I'll do some research of my own. See what other relationship improvement options are available." "That's wonderful. We can compare notes." "We absolutely will." I headed toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and honey, next time you want to improve our marriage, maybe start by asking me what I think needs improving. You might be surprised by the answers." I left her standing in the kitchen with her coffee, probably trying to figure out whether I'd agreed to her program or challenged it. The truth was, I'd done both. I was going to that marriage improvement program, but I was also going to conduct my own research. If she wanted to fix our relationship, she was about to learn that fixing required identifying what was actually broken. And after years of being managed, controlled, and voluntarily enrolled in programs I didn't choose, I had a pretty clear idea of where the real problems lay. Time to see if she was ready for the kind of improvement I had in mind. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of enthusiasm you'd expect from a dental appointment. The Harmonious Hearts facility looked exactly like what it was. A repurposed community center trying to pass itself off as a wellness retreat. Motivational posters covered the walls, and everything smelled like vanilla air freshener and desperation. We sat in a circle with 12 other couples, each pair clutching their welcome packets and complimentary herbal tea. The program leaders, a husband and wife team who introduced themselves as relationship architects, beamed at us with the practiced warmth of people who'd perfected their routine years ago. Today, we begin your journey toward authentic communication, the female leader announced. We'll start by identifying the patterns that prevent genuine intimacy in your relationships. My wife squeezed my hand, shooting me that encouraging smile she wore when she felt particularly proud of her decisions. I squeezed back and settled in to observe what I was really dealing with. The first exercise was predictable. Each person had to share what brought them to the program while their partner listened without interrupting. When our turn came, she went first. "We're here because I realized we'd stopped growing together," she began, her voice carrying that tone of thoughtful concern she used when discussing my shortcomings with friends. "My husband is wonderful, but he's become comfortable with routines that don't challenge us as a couple. I felt like I was the only one investing in our future." She painted a picture of herself as the relationship visionary, dragging her reluctant partner toward enlightenment. The other couples nodded sympathetically. "I love him deeply," she continued. "But love isn't enough without growth. I hope this program helps him see that taking care of our relationship requires active participation, not just going through the motions." When she finished, the group made appreciative sounds. The male leader thanked her for her vulnerability and emotional intelligence. My wife glowed under the praise. Then it was my turn. "I'm here because my wife enrolled me," I said simply. "She used our joint credit card, contacted my employer, and arranged my schedule without asking." When I questioned this approach, she explained that resistance to her unilateral decisions proves I don't care about our marriage. The circle went quiet. My wife's smile flickered. "I'm curious to learn whether healthy relationships typically involve one person making major decisions for both partners, or if there's a different model we should be exploring." The female leader cleared her throat. "It sounds like you have some feelings about the enrollment process." "Not feelings, observations. My wife says she wants us to communicate better, but she communicated this decision by simply making it and expecting compliance. I'm interested in understanding how that aligns with the authentic communication we're supposed to be learning." My wife jumped in quickly. "He's being defensive. This is exactly what I was talking about. He sees my initiative as control instead of care." "Help me understand the difference," I said, turning to face her directly. "When you make decisions for both of us without discussion, how should I distinguish between care and control?" She blinked, clearly not expecting the question to be turned back on her so directly. "I research everything thoroughly. I consider what's best for us as a couple. That's care. And if I disagree with your assessment of what's best for us, then we discuss it. When? Before or after you've already committed us financially and scheduled our time?" The program leaders exchanged glances. This wasn't going according to their usual script. "Let's explore this dynamic," the male leader said carefully. For the next hour, we worked through various exercises designed to highlight relationship patterns. In each scenario, the same theme emerged. My wife would take action based on her analysis of what was needed, then frame any resistance as selfishness or lack of commitment. During the trust-building exercise, she talked about how hard it was to trust a partner who didn't support her efforts to improve their life together. When we discussed future goals, she outlined the plans she'd already made for our next 5 years. I participated fully, but I also started taking mental notes. How often she used phrases like "I thought it would be good for us" when describing unilateral decisions. How quickly she redirected conversations away from her behavior and toward my reactions. The pattern was so consistent it was almost impressive. By lunch break, I'd documented enough material to fill a notebook. More importantly, I'd started to see how this dynamic played out beyond just the marriage program enrollment, the home office reorganization, the social commitments she made for both of us, the way she'd gradually taken over financial decisions by claiming to be better with details. During the break, I stepped outside and made a phone call. "Peterson Family Law, how can I help you? I'd like to schedule a consultation. I want to understand my options regarding financial accounts and shared assets." "Of course. Are you considering separation or divorce? I'm considering clarity. I want to know what belongs to whom and what rights I have regarding joint decisions. We can absolutely help with that. How's next Tuesday at 2? Perfect. When I returned to the session, my wife asked where I'd gone. Just getting some fresh air and doing a little research of my own, I said. You know how much I value being well-informed before making important decisions. She studied my face, trying to read something in my expression. What kind of research? The same kind you've been doing, looking into programs that might help improve our situation. The afternoon session focused on conflict resolution, which provided even more material for my growing understanding of our dynamic. Every exercise revealed the same pattern. She escalated issues by making unilateral decisions, then positioned any objection as the actual conflict. By the time we left that evening, I had a completely clear picture of what I was dealing with. More importantly, I had a plan. How do you think it went? She asked on the drive home. Educational, I said. Very educational. I learned exactly what I came here to learn. She smiled, interpreting my answer as validation of her decision to enroll us. She had no idea how right she was. Tuesday afternoon, I sat across from attorney Rebecca Peterson in her downtown office. She was exactly what I'd hoped for, direct, experienced, and completely uninterested in relationship counseling. You want to understand your financial position, she said, reviewing the documents I'd brought. Smart move. Most people wait until they're emotional to get this information. I'm not emotional yet. I'm strategic. She smiled. Even better. For the next hour, she walked me through everything. Joint accounts, individual rights, asset protection, and, most importantly, how to document financial decisions made without mutual consent. She gave me a clear action plan and a list of steps to secure my position. Are you planning to file for divorce? She asked as I prepared to leave. I'm planning to stop being managed. What that leads to depends on how my wife responds to having an actual partner instead of a project. By the time Saturday rolled around for our second marriage to program session, I was ready to implement my new approach. The morning session focused on emotional intimacy through vulnerability. The leaders encouraged couples to share their deepest fears about the relationship. When our turn came, my wife went first again. My biggest fear is that he'll give up on us, she said, her voice carefully modulated for maximum impact. I see him becoming distant, and I worry that my efforts to keep us connected are pushing him away. But I don't know how else to show him that I care. More sympathetic nods from the group. The female leader praised her insight and courage. Then she looked at me expectantly. My biggest fear, I said, is that I've been enabling controlling behavior by calling it love. I'm afraid I've taught my wife that making decisions for both of us is acceptable by not setting clear boundaries earlier. The room shifted uncomfortably. My wife's expression hardened. I'm not controlling. I'm proactive. Help me understand the difference. Yesterday, you scheduled a dinner with your parents for next weekend without asking if I was available. Last month, you signed us up for a gym membership because you decided we needed more fitness in our lives. How should I categorize these behaviors? I handle logistics because you don't like dealing with social planning. Did I tell you I don't like social planning, or did you assume it and then act on that assumption? She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. She couldn't remember ever asking me because she'd never asked. The male leader jumped in. It sounds like you both have different styles of managing household decisions. Exactly, I said. She manages by making decisions. I manage by discussing options first. One of these approaches includes the other person's input. One doesn't. For the next exercise, we were supposed to practice active listening, where one partner shared a concern while the other reflected back what they heard. My wife immediately launched into a monologue about feeling unappreciated for all the work she did to maintain our lifestyle. When it was my turn to reflect, I said, I hear that you feel unappreciated. I also hear that you describe activities like enrolling me in programs and scheduling my time as work you do for our relationship. What I'm not hearing is any awareness that these might be decisions we should make together. That's not reflecting, that's attacking. I'm reflecting exactly what you said. You described making unilateral decisions as relationship work. I'm asking whether that's really how partnerships function. The program leaders were losing control of their carefully structured session. Other couples were starting to pay attention to our exchange instead of focusing on their own exercises. During the break, my wife cornered me in the hallway. What's gotten into you? You're being completely hostile. I'm being direct. For the first time in years, I'm saying exactly what I think instead of just accepting your version of reality. My version of reality, I'm trying to save our marriage. By controlling every aspect of it. By making decisions, and then explaining why they're good for me. By positioning yourself as the relationship expert and me as the resistant student who needs to be managed into compliance. Her face went through several expressions before settling on frustrated determination. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, we'll see how it works out for you. The threat was subtle but clear. Step back in line or face consequences. Actually, I said, let's see how it works out for both of us, because I've started making some unilateral decisions of my own. When we returned for the afternoon session, I was ready to demonstrate what I'd learned about proactive relationship management. I have an announcement, I said when the leaders asked if anyone wanted to share insights from the break. I've been inspired by my wife's approach to relationship improvement, so I've taken some initiative of my own. My wife looked curious, but wary. I've opened my own checking account and redirected my paycheck there. I realized I was being passive about our financial planning, so I'm taking a more active role. I've also scheduled a few consultations with professionals who can help me understand my options for improving our situation. The blood drained from her face. You can't just make financial decisions without discussing them. Why can't I? You've been doing it for years. I assumed that was how we handle money in our relationship. That's completely different. How is it different? She struggled for an answer that wouldn't expose the double standard. Because my decisions were for both of us. You're being selfish. I'm being proactive. I'm taking responsibility for my own financial security instead of leaving it to someone else to manage. Isn't that the kind of personal growth you wanted to see? The other couples were watching our exchange with fascination. The program leaders looked like they wanted to crawl under their meditation cushions. We need to discuss this privately, she said. Absolutely. Right after this session ends, we can have a long conversation about making joint decisions together. I'm looking forward to it. For the rest of the afternoon, she sat rigid beside me while I participated enthusiastically in every exercise. I used the communication techniques to highlight every controlling behavior. I applied the conflict resolution strategies to refuse taking responsibility for her emotional reactions to my newfound boundaries. When the session ended, she was silent on the drive home. I could practically hear her mind racing, trying to figure out how to regain control of a situation that had shifted completely out of her hands. We need to talk, she said as we pulled into our driveway. We absolutely do, I agreed. I've been looking forward to a real conversation for years. But I already knew this wouldn't be a conversation. It would be an escalation, and I was ready for that too. The conversation lasted 3 hours, and followed exactly the script I'd expected. She started with hurt confusion, escalated to righteous anger, attempted guilt manipulation, and finally settled on ultimatums. I remained calm throughout, applying every communication technique from the marriage program with surgical precision. You're being incredibly selfish, she said for the 4th time. Marriage is about compromise. I agree completely. When do you plan to start compromising? I compromise all the time. I gave up my dream job to support your career. You took a position at a company owned by your father's golf partner because it paid 20% more than what I was making. You called it supporting my career, but you've used it to justify making financial decisions ever since. Her mouth opened and closed. She'd rewritten that history so many times she'd started believing her own version. You're twisting everything. I've sacrificed for this marriage. What specifically have you sacrificed? She couldn't answer, because there wasn't an answer. Every major decision had been made to benefit her priorities, then reframed as sacrifice for the greater good. By Monday morning, she'd moved to phase 2 of her strategy. She called her mother. I knew because her mother called me at work 20 minutes later. I'm very disappointed in you, her mother began without preamble. After everything my daughter has done to support you, this is how you repay her? What exactly did she tell you I've done? You've become secretive and hostile. You're making financial decisions behind her back and refusing to participate in counseling. I had to admire the spin. Opening my own checking account became secretive financial decisions. Setting boundaries became refusing counseling. Did she mention that she enrolled me in a program without asking and used our joint funds to pay for it? Silence. Did she tell you that I've participated in every session while asking for mutual decision-making instead of unilateral management? That's not how she described it. I'm sure it isn't. But that's exactly what happened. Her mother tried a few more guilt tactics before realizing I wasn't responding to them. The call ended with a vague threat about family loyalty and consequences. Tuesday brought reinforcements. Her sister showed up at my office during lunch. "We need to talk," she announced, settling into the chair across from my desk like she was conducting an intervention. "About what?" "About how you're treating my sister. She's devastated. She's trying to save your marriage, and you're punishing her for caring." "I'm curious. What did she tell you I've done wrong?" "You've become cold and calculating. You're making decisions without considering her feelings. You're acting like you don't care about the relationship." The pattern was predictable. Frame my boundary setting as emotional abuse, my financial independence as betrayal, my refusal to accept unilateral decisions as not caring about the relationship. Did she mention why I opened my own account? Because you're trying to hide money from her. Because she's been making financial commitments without my input for years. I wanted to ensure I have some control over my own earnings. Her sister blinked. "That's not what she said." "What exactly did she say?" As her sister recounted the conversation, it became clear that my wife had painted herself as the victim of sudden, inexplicable hostility. She'd left out the marriage program enrollment method, the years of unilateral decisions, and the pattern of framing any resistance as relationship sabotage. "I think you might want to get the full story before taking sides," I said when her sister finished. "Are you calling my sister a liar?" "I'm suggesting that there might be relevant information you haven't received." By Wednesday, the campaign had expanded to include our mutual friends. I started getting texts asking if everything was okay, mentioning that they'd heard I was going through something and acting differently toward my wife. The narrative was spreading through our social circle like a carefully managed public relations disaster. I was the suddenly hostile husband who'd turned on his loving, supportive wife for mysterious reasons. Thursday evening, she played her final card. "I've scheduled an appointment with a real marriage counselor," she announced. "Someone licensed and qualified, not just a weekend program. If you care about this marriage at all, you'll come with me." "When's the appointment?" "Friday at 4. You scheduled it without asking me again. This is an emergency. Our marriage is falling apart because you won't communicate. I've been communicating clearly for weeks. You just don't like what I'm saying. You've been attacking me for trying to help our relationship. I've been refusing to accept your unilateral decisions as help. There's a difference." She stared at me for a long moment. I could see her calculating. The family pressure hadn't worked. The social pressure hadn't worked. Now she was moving to professional authority. "If you don't come to counseling, I'll know you've given up on us." There it was again. Comply with her approach or be labeled as someone who doesn't care about the marriage. "I'll make you a deal," I said. "I'll go to counseling under one condition." "What?" "You tell the counselor exactly how this marriage program enrollment happened. Every detail. How you researched for months without mentioning it. How you used our joint account. How you contacted my employer. And how you positioned my questions about the process as resistance to improving our relationship." She hesitated. "That's not relevant to our current problems. If it's not relevant, then you shouldn't have any problem sharing it." "Fine. But you have to promise to participate honestly. I'll tell the truth about everything. Will you?" Her pause told me everything I needed to know. Friday afternoon, we sat in Dr. Martinez's office. My wife launched into her prepared narrative about how I'd suddenly become hostile and uncooperative, refusing to work on our marriage and making secretive financial decisions. When she finished, Dr. Martinez turned to me. "I'd like to hear your perspective on these concerns." "I'd be happy to share my perspective," I said. "But first, I'd like my wife to explain how we ended up in marriage counseling in the first place. What was the sequence of events that led to this appointment?" My wife shot me a warning look. "We went to a marriage improvement program." "How did we come to attend that program?" "I enrolled us." "Can you describe that enrollment process in detail?" She realized she was trapped. Either she'd tell the truth and expose her pattern of unilateral decision-making, or she'd lie to a professional counselor while I sat there with documentation of everything. I researched programs and selected one that seemed appropriate for our needs. "Did you discuss the research with me?" "No." "Did you ask for my input on program selection?" "No." "How did you pay for it?" "Our joint account." "Did you ask me before spending our money on this program?" "No." Dr. Martinez was taking notes. My wife was starting to understand that her entire narrative was unraveling. "So you researched for months, selected a program, enrolled both of you, paid with joint funds, contacted his employer to arrange time off, and presented this as a completed decision?" I was being proactive. And how did he respond when you told him about this? My wife looked at me, then back at the counselor. She was finally realizing that the truth didn't support the story she'd been telling everyone. He questioned the process. And how did you interpret his questions? Another long pause. As resistance to improving our marriage, Dr. Martinez set down her pen and looked at both of us. I think we've identified the actual issue here, and it's not what either of you initially described. The room went quiet. My wife's carefully constructed narrative had collapsed under the weight of simple, direct questions. Now we were going to have the real conversation. Dr. Martinez leaned forward, her expression serious but not unkind. What I'm hearing is a pattern where one partner makes decisions for both parties, then frames any objection as relationship sabotage. That's not a communication problem. That's a control problem. My wife's face went pale. I'm not controlling, I'm organized. Making major decisions without your partner's input isn't organization. It's unilateral control. And positioning his need for mutual decision-making as resistance to the relationship is manipulative. The words hung in the air like a diagnosis neither of us could ignore. I do everything for our marriage, my wife said, her voice rising. I plan, I organize, I improve things. He just goes along with whatever. Has he ever had the opportunity to not go along? Dr. Martinez asked. What do you mean? You present him with completed decisions. Where in that process does he have input? My wife opened her mouth, then closed it. She couldn't answer because there wasn't an opportunity for input in her system. I want to try something, Dr. Martinez continued. I want you both to describe your ideal marriage dynamic. My wife went first. I want a partnership where we both work toward common goals and support each other's growth. And what does that look like practically? We make decisions that benefit both of us, and we communicate openly about our needs. Dr. Martinez turned to me. Your turn. I want exactly what she described. The difference is I think decisions that benefit both of us should be made by both of us. And communication should happen before decisions are made, not after they're implemented. Dr. Martinez nodded. So, you both want the same thing: partnership, mutual benefit, open communication. The difference is timing and process. She looked at my wife. When you make decisions for both of you, are you creating partnership or preventing it? I'm being efficient. At whose expense? The question hit like a physical blow. My wife sat back in her chair, finally understanding that her efficiency came at the cost of my agency. I never thought about it that way. What would change if you included him in decisions before making them? It would take longer. We might disagree. And if you disagree, we'd have to work it out together, which sounds like partnership to me. Dr. Martinez turned to me. What would you need to feel like an equal partner in this marriage? Consultation before commitment. Discussion before decisions. The opportunity to say no without it being framed as not caring about the relationship. And if she agrees to that process, but you disagree with her preferences, then we negotiate until we find something we both can accept, or we agree to disagree and find alternatives. That sounds reasonable to me, Dr. Martinez said. She looked at my wife. Does it sound reasonable to you? My wife was quiet for a long moment. I could see her processing the realization that everything she'd framed as caring for our marriage had actually been controlling it. I thought I was helping, she said finally. I believe you did. But impact matters more than intention. The impact of making decisions for someone else is that you remove their choice. That's not help. That's management. So what do I do now? You start asking instead of telling. You start discussing instead of deciding. You start creating space for his input instead of expecting compliance with your conclusions. My wife looked at me with something I hadn't seen in years: uncertainty, vulnerability, the realization that she might have been wrong. Can you forgive me? She asked. That depends, I said. Are you asking for forgiveness so we can go back to the old pattern? Or because you understand why the pattern needs to change? I understand now. I do. I see how controlling I've been. Good. Because I'm not going back to being managed. I'm done with unilateral decisions and ultimatums disguised as caring. I want a partner, not a project manager. What does that look like going forward? I pulled out my phone and showed her the notes I'd been taking. Every major decision gets discussed before any action is taken. Joint expenses require joint approval. Social commitments require mutual agreement. And when we disagree, we work it out together instead of one person overruling the other. She nodded slowly. That's fair. And the manipulation stops. No more calling my boundaries resistance. No more framing your decisions as sacrifice. No more enlisting family and friends to pressure me into compliance. Her face crumpled. I didn't realize I was doing that. Now you do. So it stops. Dr. Martinez smiled. This is what real communication looks like. Direct, honest, and focused on creating mutual understanding. So we can fix this? My wife asked. You can, Dr. Martinez said, if you're both willing to change how you interact. The question is whether you want to be right or whether you want to be married to an equal partner. My wife looked at me, then back at Dr. Martinez. I want to be married to an equal partner. I want to learn how to do this differently. For the first time in months, I believed her. 6 weeks later, our relationship looked completely different. Not perfect, but fundamentally changed in ways that actually mattered. The first test came 3 days after the counseling session. She wanted to redecorate the living room and caught herself halfway through researching furniture options without asking me. I almost did it again, she admitted. I was about to pick out a new couch and present you with the options I'd already narrowed down. What stopped you? I realize that's not how partnerships work. So I'm asking now, do you want to redecorate the living room? It was a simple question, but it represented a fundamental shift. She was asking for my input before forming her conclusions. I'm open to it. What's prompting the idea? The furniture is getting worn, and I think we could use a refresh, but I want to hear what you think first. We spent the next hour discussing what we both liked and disliked about our current setup. We disagreed on colors, but found common ground on style. Most importantly, we made decisions together instead of one person convincing the other. The second test was bigger. Her company offered her a promotion that would require relocating to another state. In the past, she would have researched the opportunity, weighed all the factors, and presented me with her analysis of why we should move. Instead, she told me about the offer the same day she received it. I haven't responded yet, she said. I wanted to discuss it with you first. What's your initial reaction? It's an incredible opportunity professionally. The salary increase would be significant, and the position is exactly what I've been working toward. And the downsides? Leaving our life here, starting over socially, the impact on your career. We talked for hours over several days. I researched job opportunities in the new city while she gathered more details about the position. We visited the area together, looked at neighborhoods, and discussed pros and cons. In the end, we decided together that the opportunity was worth the disruption. But the decision felt completely different because we made it as partners instead of her making it and me adapting to it. The biggest change was in how we handled disagreements. When we couldn't agree on something, we no longer fell into the old pattern where she'd escalate until I capitulated or I'd withdraw until she got frustrated. Instead, we'd table the discussion and return to it later with new information or different perspectives. Sometimes we'd agree to disagree and find alternatives. Sometimes one of us would change our mind based on the other's input. The key was that neither of us felt like we were being overruled or managed. Our friends and family noticed the difference. Her mother, who'd called to scold me about my selfishness, now commented on how much happier we both seemed. You're both more relaxed, she observed during a recent dinner. There's less tension between you. We're learning to be actual partners, my wife replied, instead of me trying to manage our life and him trying to avoid being managed. Her sister, who'd ambushed me at work, apologized for getting involved without understanding the full situation. I thought you were being unreasonable, she said. I didn't realize she was making decisions for both of you. That would drive me crazy, too. The most satisfying moment came when we ran into one of the couples from the marriage program. They asked how we were doing with the techniques we'd learned. We learned something completely different than what they were teaching, my wife said. We learned that good communication starts with respect for each other's autonomy. The program was helpful, I added, but not in the way they intended. It showed us what our real problems were. 3 months after that first marriage to counseling session, we're still working on building new patterns. She still catches herself making assumptions about what's best for us, but now she pauses and asks instead of acting. I still sometimes expect to be presented with completed decisions, but now I speak up immediately when something feels unilateral. We're not the same couple who sat in that marriage program circle with one person trying to fix the other. We're two people building something together, making decisions together, and respecting each other's right to disagree. The marriage improvement program my wife enrolled me in was supposed to teach me how to be a better partner to her. Instead, it taught both of us how to be better partners to each other. Turns out the only program we really needed was learning to treat each other like equals. Everything else was just details. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.